just would like to take off from where we left last week with Trace on transpersonal, and also cover something that I experienced in the last about last week to be exact, which is very powerfully systemic, powerfully group, powerfully organizational development, OD. I was at a national training laboratory workshop, or lab as it is called, Human Interaction Lab, High Lab. It is known as T group training, sensitivity training by several other names. In India, ISABs, Sumidas, and others do it. Tavistock does it in UK. NTL is a mothership. It was started by Kurt Lewin in, just after the Second World War in Bethel in Maine in the United States. I became a member a couple of years ago, and it was mandatory, and so I attended. So some of the things that I really would like to put them through and cover it from a systemic perspective, which could also add value for our individual awareness, individual as well as collective awareness. So in the last session, when Trace was talking about transpersonal, and this is one of the trainings from transpersonal performance or presence coaching by Alan Seal, which program that Trace was trained in. Alan Seal would be likely to partner us later this year, running his program through Coacharya. One of the things, if those of you who were here last week or last month in the session would remember, Trace asked this question that in the systemic approach, when you're using the transpersonal approach, as it were, a question that you tend to ask is, what is the change that is waiting to happen? Rather than saying, what is the change that I want to have, what is the change that I want to make, etc. What is the change that is waiting to happen? May seem to many of you to be exactly the same, may not be any different, but there's a very, very fundamental difference in the way that we approach that. When we ask a question, what is the change that I want to have? We are coming from what may be called a having state, that we desire something to happen. This is what we want it as, the having, which is what mostly the space that we all operate from, which then is followed by what is the change that we want to create, which is a doing state. But when we ask a question, what is the change that is waiting to happen? Or what is the change that wants to be me or part of the system? You are actually asking a question in the being state. So the question itself that you are posing shifts from the having and the doing, the so-called active states, but also the judgmental states, into a far more powerful, stable, and still being state. And actually, there is a state even beyond that. The state beyond that is what I would call going beyond the having, doing, and even being into one of just accepting. Accepting is also being, but you just accept whatever happens. You are quite okay with whatever change that is happening. In a sense, you become the change yourself. Again, the nuances are fairly subtle, but if you have experienced that as a difference between what might be for you a being state or a becoming state to an accepting state, at least I find that even in the being state, there's a certain degree of attachment, there's a certain degree of wanting to have, or wanting to do, and very often we mask it by asking a being level question or putting a being level proposition, rather than just accepting whatever happens. Now, what I want to ask you is simply this. When you think about a stage of acceptance, what is that emotion that comes up for you most powerfully? What would you relate as an emotion to the state of acceptance? If you can just put it in the chat. Thanks. Yeah, I think a lot of it are in the lines of what I would call, but the one that I respond closest to in this is gratitude. Earlier today, Magda sent me uh, a link to something that has been studied and published by Wharton, and anything that is put together by Wharton or Harvard or Stanford automatically takes priority over any other scripture, including the Bible, and which talked about gratitude being the most powerful of all emotions and how gratitude helps in many ways, including relief of stress, including our own growth potential, all kinds of stuff. In the Hindu philosophy, in what is called a chakra theory, energies and emotions, gratitude is associated with the highest level of energy, the highest center, which is called the Sahasrara, the crown center, which is the thousand petal lotus. The predominant emotion, energy that takes you over is gratitude. And the gratitude comes with acceptance, with a sense of surrender, not in a negative sense, but in an extremely positive sense, that whatever happened is fine with me. And I'm a part of that. I'm a part of this universe. I belong to this universe. Whatever the universe decides for me is okay. Of course, it's extremely difficult. Somebody asked a question, in the corporate world, is it possible? Yeah, we can keep questioning it. But I do find that more and more people are resonating to this concept. There are some companies which have made it their business to work in these lines. At least from what I see in public, a company that I used to work for several decades before, and I have tremendous respect for that company and gratitude, is Unilever. Under Paulson, for several years, for several decades, it followed the whole concept of sustainability. And there was an element of this gratitude to the environment. This is what we need to serve. This is what we need to do. Whether that's going to be followed by people who have taken over from him recently, that is yet to be seen. But there are many other companies which also follow this philosophy in India and several other countries and regions. Priya has said something, let me go through this. Acceptance is the birthplace for gratitude. Absolutely. Yeah. When I was going through this, the question that I would like to pose here is there anybody in the audience now? I know that I have personally worked with people, trained and coached people who have worked or who have attended these labs, T group sessions, and Sumidas and his ISABs and so on. If there is anybody here, can you just ping me or put your hands up so that I can invite you into the panel, because I would like some contribution from you in terms of what you experienced. Anyone who has some actual experiential knowledge and learning with the T group sessions or sensitivity training. I would be a bit surprised that if almost with about 100 people here, there's no one. Yes, let me look. Let me put on my glasses. Shaila Mohan. Parma Sharma, or is it? Yeah, Parma Sharma Kakoli. Okay, let me put the three of you. Shaila Mohan. Promote to panelists. Kaoli Saha. Thank you for coming in. Kaoli Saha. How I'm not able to get that. Kaoli, are you Kakoli? Kakoli Saha? Kakoli Saha? I don't find the name here, unless it's in some other name. Are you registered under some other name? Oh, you are there. Okay. Okay. Magda, are you promoting Parma Sharma?
Yep.
Okay. All done. Okay. Brilliant. So we have at least three of you here. I don't feel that lonely anymore, so feel a little better. I just want to...
Ram, I'm always here too, and I'm here to tell you that your video froze again.
Okay, and I'm
just a silent partner in all this.
I keep getting frozen in the oddest of shapes, but anyway, I have to be careful. Okay, so now for me, this was my first experience, so I really don't know too much about it, except what I had read before. But this experience was extremely powerful. It was, as you probably know, is for 5 days, and the 5 days you work in a group. In our group, we had about 8 people, all from diverse environments. I was the only person from India. There was a Chinese girl. There were a couple of them from Italy, a couple from Britain, and 2 others from different parts of the world. And like all groups do, there were subgroups that formed. There were many things that happened. There were interventions that went on. What I found at some point in time extremely interesting was, of course, the group started, which I'm sure that's where the groups start everywhere, with absolutely no instructions what you're going to do. So we had no guidelines, no norms, no nothing. And so each one of us made our own interpretations about what we wanted to be and what we had heard about this and how we would like to behave, and so on and so forth. So I'll come back to what my learnings were in a little bit. So if each one of you, there are 4 of you here, Parma, Devi Prasad, Kakoli, and Shaila. So if you could just, not so much the drama or the content, but the context, or what were the primary learnings? What is it that you took away with you? Any one of you, if you would like to start, unmute yourself, please.
So I can go first.
Yeah, please.
So hi Ram, this is Parma. So I have done 3 levels, so which is professional development. So the journey has been where we understand to recognize our own emotion first, and then how we understand the emotion that others are experiencing, and how we are being sensitive to self, and how we are being sensitive to the group. So that is what primarily my takeaway has been. In addition to that, also in terms of various things which plays out in group dynamics because of various belief system, how you project certain things on others, how you carry your value system, and then how you actually finally behave and deal with it. So that has been my few of my key takeaways and learning through this labs.
Okay, I'll come to the next round of questions a little later. Yeah, any one of you, Dave, you or Shaila or Kakoli?
Yeah, hi Ram. This is Debi.
Yeah.
So I did my ALHP and first the BLHP and the ALHP. So it is little way back in, I think in about 2001-2 I did. The interesting part was that I distinctly remember my first experience, and uh, I kind of discovered myself, and I also kind of realized the image that we kind of try to build about ourselves, um, and then how it gets shattered immediately, and we realize that what we believe ourselves to be may not be the real self. So that was the first one, and also in the process. Um, I realized the impact of my behavior on others. Okay, so I distinctly remember my daughter was then just about 3 years or 3.5 years, coming back from the lab and asking her, saying that, "How much do you love Papa, and what is that you don't like about Papa?" I still remember. So that was really the first experience was really fantastic. The second one, when I did, I realized that it's a very cozy group. I mean, where you can experiment with yourself. You could study the behavior. You can see how the group moves in the thinking. You also see how where people come from. Okay, so the originate of the I mean, how their behavior, how they themselves relate to a certain value system that they have been nurturing over a period of time. So it's like you are able to go back to their mind deep inside and able to read where they are coming from. So I think that was something which is extremely well, and I still feel that when it is a group interaction, group processing, I feel that I am able to read the minds of the group and how they behave, and that particularly helped me in my IR situation when I was discussing with unions and the way unions behave. Okay, I think that's my takeaway, Ram.
Okay, interesting. If I had told my facilitator I can read other people's mind, he would have told me to get out of the group. But anyway, that's a different matter. Okay. Kakoli,
I agree.
Shaila, Kakoli, the two of you.
Uh, Thank you, Ram. This is Shaila here.
Yeah.
In the past 17 years that I've been associated with ISABS and right now the Dean Consultancy, I've never ceased being amazed at the human spirit and resilience. I'm always stumped by how much a person can go through and still, continue to seek a better way to live. That's something that's always been, what should I say, amazed. That's about it. The what did I take away is, and I still take away, is understanding our limiting beliefs, which we still kind of have faith that this is what worked for me and it still will work for me. So understanding that and learning to do away with it to some extent helps me push the envelope many a time. The other most important thing is what I learned is deep listening. To really listen to what is not being said, to listen to the body language, to listen to the core beliefs from which the person comes. These are some things that ISABS has really taught me.
Fantastic.
Thank
Kakoli?
you.
Been with myself since long, about 25 years. And what I have really learned to look at myself and also look at and try to understand others more empathy. My empathy has gone up, but I did not realize how the journey has been for me. And also, I'm amazed at the sometimes the choices that I'm able to generate in dealing with people, dealing with their feelings of others. And that is where I always in touch with my own feelings and feelings of others. That has been the most amazing thing that I have had from myself. And that is the truth I really love doing. Understand myself and understanding others. That's the amazement inside every time I think I feel very enriched on that.
Thanks, Kokoli. Your voice is breaking up a bit. Probably the bandwidth isn't very good.
Yeah, that's why I switched off the video.
Yeah, I know. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Let me put together some of the stuff which pretty much sort of resonates with what you said, but probably in a slightly different way, as it were. First of all, when the group started, the first day there was no explanation as to any guidelines, any explanation, no, nothing at all. I mean, we had some sessions which kind of get-together sessions, but that had nothing to really with what was going to happen. In the group of 8, so I decided that, I don't know, I felt that normally I tend to talk, and therefore I just wanted to keep quiet. I wanted to listen. And I had a bit of a back problem. So I sat just a bit outside of the group, as it were, in a circle, and sort of balanced myself against a wall kind of stuff. And I stayed like that for almost about an hour to hour and a half. I was very comfortable. I didn't at all miss talking. It was like my being back in a Vipassana session, as it were. And I was quite comfortable listening to people. And then there was this guy who was actually sitting next to me in the circle of 8 with the 2 facilitators, circle of 10, who sort of didn't really turn to me and say anything, but facing the group said, you know, we have this one person who's outside of this group and who's not part of the group, who's not contributing to the group, etc. And maybe he doesn't want to be part of the group or something of that sort. So in a sense, I was forced to sort of get into the group because everybody was looking at me. And then he, of course, pointedly turned towards me and sort of looked at me and said, is there anything that's not making you comfortable? And so I did get in, I started contributing. But sure enough, after some time, there was an area of discomfort between the two of us. And much later, I learned that this person had been through a lab before. This was his second experience. And so there were some learnings which probably he was trying to test out. I'm not quite sure what it was. So the day went on like that. There was another person who was slightly different from the others and whose opinions were somewhat at divergence with others. So there were some of us, about 3 or 4, who sort of were pretty comfortable with each other. So there were groups that were forming. The next day, one of the facilitators was, actually there was one from India who probably many of you, if you've been in ISABs, you would know her, Shushma. Shushma was one of the facilitators, but she was in another group. The person who led ours, the senior facilitator, was a guy called Walt. I think Walt is probably about as old as I am, who's one of the very, very old NTL veterans. He has written books, very respected figure. And something that he said, the first thing in the morning, truly resonated for me. A few things, I'll go through them in no particular order. And like I think Parma said, and somebody else also repeated, he said it's all about listening. And then he said, you know, listening is not one way. Many of you may think that you are done with if you listen. Active listening, or whatever the word that is used is. But listening doesn't stop with that. Listening is two-way. Listening is about sharing. Listening is about exploring. Listening is about giving feedback. So if you truly have listened, you not only would have the ability, but you also have the obligation. And if you are going to continue the communication, that you share that as a feedback or exploration in whichever way that you want with the other person. I'll come to that in a minute in terms of how it resonated for me. And then he established in terms of the listening and the observation about oneself within as something he called as SET, set. The first one is S is sensations, the bodily sensations. What is it that you feel on the body? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel tight? Do you feel cool? Do you feel hot? Do you feel pressurized? Something stressful, unstressful, whatever it is. The question really is, how often do we think about it? I know about it. I've studied somatics. I know that as coach, we're supposed to, but very often we ask it as a part of the competency model. So we look smart in the eyes of the assessor. It's marking the markers rather than really feeling it. Oh, I see you doing something with your hand. I see you doing this. I see that your shoulders are hunched or whatever it is. About the client. How often do you do it with yourself? In supervision, there is something called the sixth eye, which is supposed to be exactly that in terms of exploring by the supervisor, of the supervisor, and being able to communicate it. This is how I feel. This is how what you say makes me feel, or something of that sort. So the first one is about the sensation, the bodily sensation, what is happening to you. And I really would like each one of you at this point in time, and what we call in the lab, I guess it's a common word across the NTL world, the check-in process. What do you really feel? Where have you walked from into this group at this point in time, at this time? If you have just come away from a cricket match where India lost, so do you feel sad about it? Or do you feel India did a great job, given what they did? Or something else, whatever it is. So think about it. Don't overcomplicate it. What is it that you feel? So can we just put down some thoughts, if any of you can? How does your body feel at this point in time? Have you ever talked to your body? If not, this may be a good point for you to start. I'm looking for self-aware is not a body feeling, I'm sorry. It's a philosophical concept, it's a thought. My question was, how does your body feel? Your body never feels self-aware. A bit tired is right. A bit tense is okay. Energetic, something in the stomach, I feel my body feels tired. A lot of people are very tired. Okay. Restless, bit heavy in my chest. Anxious. Anxious is an emotion. Muscles are tight is right. Zoning out, whatever that means, I don't know what it is. But that's not about the body. Ease and comfortable, energy running through, tired, rigid. Jaw is clenched. Brilliant. Yeah, Vijay, I'm not asking you what you talk to yourself. I just ask, what is it that you feel at this point in time in your body? Standing active, feel like dancing, neck is stiff, flickers in the muscles are relaxed, light. Yeah, many of you, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Try and do this every time. Some of you are confusing emotions with the body sensations. Emotions come later, we'll come to that in a minute. But try and see if you could feel exactly where is your body at this point in time? How is your body at this time? The way you put it, listening round is wonderful. What is the difference between listening and interaction? Oh, we'll come to that, please. Let's hold on for a minute, Leo. So at this point in time, we are looking at one part of the listening process. In a way, you're listening to yourself. The question I would ask you is, if you're not listening to yourself, if you're not listening to your body, how well can you listen to somebody else? You may say, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't have to listen to myself for me to listen to somebody else. That's not quite true. If you don't listen to yourself, you don't listen to somebody else. So try and check in, whether it is coaching, whether it is not coaching, wherever you are, especially when you are the kind of person who, like me, I'm a little better at it now in terms of ability to control my emotions, manage my emotions. If I were to practice this regularly to see where I am at in terms of my body, am I getting tense? Am I getting stressed? Am I getting tight somewhere? Whatever is happening, are my arms tingling? Are my feet tingling? Something which happens when I'm angry. But before that, the body is telling me. So the sensations in the body occur perhaps micro or milliseconds before the emotions kick in from the mind. So at the next level, it's about the emotions. Then you listen to the emotions. As you listen to the emotions, those are some of you have already put in there, I feel anxious and so on and so forth. If you would just like to, for yourself, it's not that you are helping me, but you are helping yourself, for you to put down, what is it? When you say my shoulder blades are hunching, what is it? Crumpled up, wings up, cramp. What is the emotion that is coming up in you? Emotion or feeling. The emotion or the feeling is still a mental frame. It's not cognitive, it's not a thought, but it's still a mental frame. So what is happening out there? Anxiety, excited. Yeah, Deepa, you are saying you feel active and connected with nature. Yeah, but what is the emotion? The emotion may be happy, emotion may be excited, emotion may be something else. Tense is still, yeah, tense could be an emotion as well, Chandran, but it could also be a bodily sensation. That tension, is it reflected as anxiety? Is it something else? Why I'm being picky is that if you're able to make that difference between what is sensation and what is emotion, there's a lot that you will start learning about yourself. Because one starts earlier than the other. The bodily sensation starts earlier. Yeah, I probably need a hug, so you feel needy. Fair enough. That's a good emotion. Thanks for being vulnerable. Ego, yeah, ego could be an emotion, but you could be more specific, hiding a bit, like a tortoise in a shell, not coming out. I agree. That is, yeah, I feel not comfortable. I want to stay within my shell. That is where I am safe. If I come out, I'm not safe. So if I'm tense, I'm coming from lower, not necessarily, I don't know what the psychological meaning of that word is, lower identification. I'm not quite sure. You can be tense. Anyway, I don't understand the meaning of the word lower identification, but I don't think it's anything lower or higher. You're feeling tense, you're feeling tense, that's all. I'm feeling, yeah, overloaded, overstretched, etc. All that kind of a stuff. Feel cold and chill before emotion of disappointment sets in. The cold and chill is really the body sensation, the emotion of disappointment. Maybe one leads to the other, perhaps not. So one of the things that I might suggest to you is, I mean, we can look at it at the next level that is different in terms of, you can actually, if you feel cold and chill, can you visualize yourself being warm? And therefore, does a disappointment change to something else? You can experiment with yourself. So anyway, the two first letters of the set, S and E, sensations and emotions. And the third is the thoughts. I'm tense, therefore I'm anxious in emotions. And therefore, what is the thought that is coming up for me? Perhaps that I want to get out of here. I'm not comfortable here. I'm not happy with this person whom I'm talking to. I'm not happy doing whatever I have been asked to do. So that is the third, which is a thought that is happening, which is a cognitive expression. So you can think about it. If someone is saying that my shoulder blades are hunched and something is happening, or if Kakuli is saying that I'm feeling needy or whatever, what is therefore the thought that follows it? The thought is usually about something I need to do about this. The sensation and the emotions are both like, that is the being state, that is where I am at this point in time. But the thought invariably would think about what is it that I want to do. So if you look at it from this way, you look at it this way. If you have specific questions, I can try and answer that. Not that I'm an expert. There are probably people in this panel here who have far more expertise on this. But when I looked at it this way, even at a very, very simplistic level, a few things that occurred to me were, from a coaching perspective, what was happening here was that the listening was no longer just active listening, CC5. It was also CC6, which was questioning and exploring, and also CC7, which was communication. It was two-way. And for that to happen, for me to be able to do that, look at my own sensations, emotions, and the thoughts, and like someone said before, also look at this in terms of who I'm interacting with, the other person I'm interacting with, or the group which is interacting with one another. What needs to happen for us to be truly, in a sense, of value is to be present without judgment. The word that I use for presence is absence. When my ego is absent, when my judgment is absent, I'm not biased. Just because a guy told me that you are sitting outside and you're not contributing, and therefore, are you really sure that you want to contribute? It did, for a short period of time, make me feel not hurt, but certainly, yeah, I wanted to poke back, as it were. But I had to let that go and get into the real involvement in that session, which was without my judgment, and then start probably looking curiously at where was this person coming from, without making a judgment about that person, without making impacted by what he had said. Along with that, once you start doing it better, you build in the trust in the relationships, and ultimately you create the awareness. So in a sense, active listening, just active listening, and as a part of that listening, the way that we were described listening was that it is two-way communication. It's about sharing, it's about feedback, it's about exploring, etc. You are actually covering everything from CC3 to CC8. Just think about it as a coach. We are all taught to look at these in isolation. CC5 is active listening, and the markers with that is da 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 da. And if it is CC6, it should be something different. If it's CC8, it should be something different, and so on and so forth. But if you were to really look at a totality of it in this sense, that listening is two-way, and it's about listening as well as hearing and feeding back and exploring and so on and so forth. I think there's a very significant change in terms how a coach can work, how a coach can work towards mastery. So yeah, if any of you have any particular question on this, when we say that the brain gets into a flight or fight mode, is that a thought or an emotion? I would presume that it's more a thought at this point in time, but if you are able to, for example, if you want to go into the neurobiology of it, the flight or fight emotion originates from the subconscious mind, which is the reptilian brain, and it's based on the past memories of survival. And what it does is to excite what is called the HPA axis. The hypothalamus, P stands for pituitary and A stands for adrenaline. So it activates that, and the adrenaline, which is a hormone which actually works on your tips of your fingers and toes. And so you will feel an excitement, either with flight or fight, in terms of those. That is a body sensation that would happen. Like, for example, they use adrenaline to, for people who are in cardiac arrest, for example, to kick them back into action. So the adrenaline has that effect. So look at fight or flight from that position, and you will see an excitement, even if it's fear that you want to flee, but there would be a certain nervous excitement. Whereas if it's a fight, it's a different kind of excitement. So that is what happens. And then the thought would be, okay, even though I may be fleeing, is there a possibility for me to turn around and face? Or even though if I am taking a fighting stance, is there a possibility for me to flee or whatever? There could be multiple thoughts which come up. I don't know. It depends on the situation, what happens. So, but it's a good question. Something like this, where what is the body sensation, what is the emotion, etc. Thought I would hide a bit. Should I, or can I come out of? Of course I can come out, contribute, receive. Beautiful. Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. So that's really what it is. And whether you are doing it like I did purposely in a sense, but there are others who do it for whatever reason, and that it's not that they are always like that, but at that point in time they are like that for whatever reason. So multiple things happen. So all I'm saying here is this. If you were to look at listening in a much larger sense, and you include within listening this whole element of feedback, sharing, exploring, etc., though I'm putting it in a very tactical sense that it's covering from CC3 to CC8, but that is not probably the best way of putting it, but it has tremendous effects. It's in terms of your being able to understand yourself, you're being able to understand the other person. And that's where I think it was Coacharya who said, she sort of implied the Johari's window, where you start by exploring with others, or you allow others to explore you, you open up the hidden side that you have. And you also open up into the blind spots that you have. The blind spot being the space that others know and you do not know. The hidden being where you know, but you don't want others to know. So your open window becomes more and more open. And whether you're a coach or a client, here we are not talking about in a coach-client relationship. In a systemic coaching, I'm looking at much more in a larger group sense. If you as a facilitator, if you are able to do that with people, help them to start looking at these sensations, emotions, and thoughts as they converse with one another, what is it that is striking you? And there may be some ground rules that you cannot hit out at somebody else. You need to be appreciative. You need to be considerate. And here is where I think one of you said this, probably in slightly different words. Is your intent landing the way that you intended? Is the impact that is produced by what you said, either because of the words or the tone of voice or your body language or whatever, is it landing the way that you intended? And I've known this for a long time, and it came out into the magnifying lens when I was at this lab, that the facilitator was kind enough to point out to me in private. He said, you know, Ram, you need to really ask people how you are impacting people, however good your intentions are. I understand from you that your intentions are very noble, but are they landing the way you intended? Sometimes they don't land the way that you intended because of the way that you say it, your tone of voice or body language. Sometimes it's because of the situation, the context. It is because of the background of the person, whatever it may be. If you are in the same state of aspiration as I am, where the worst thing that can be ever done by me is to hurt another person, then in that case, that's not acceptable. You have to be extremely careful about how you are impacting another person and not just excuse yourself saying, oh, that was not my intent. I did say that to the facilitator, you know, that was not my intent. I feel very sorry about it. He said, just too bad. What's happened has happened. You've already caused the damage. So what's your point in being sorry at this point in time? If you trip somebody and somebody falls down and breaks a leg, and if you're saying that I'm sorry about it, is it going to make any difference to that person? But how many of us do that? Even in a coaching situation. And when you move from there into a systemic space, You are actually magnifying them. So I'm just stopping here for a moment. And what I really want the panelists to think about a little bit, whatever all of you said at this point in time, and whatever I talked a little more about it later, these experiences that you had, that each one of you have had in terms of looking at your own emotions, observing other people's emotions in a group, etc. If you were to put it up in a systemic context, by systemic context, I mean that you are working in a group who may not necessarily be a team, or they may be a team, and you are trying to see if there is something that you can create with them, co-create as an objective, as a vision that they can act upon so that there's a change that can happen. How well do you think these apply and why? Any of you, please. Because this is where I believe truly an understanding of group dynamics, if you really do understand group dynamics or trying to understand group dynamics, it can help you tremendously in your systemic practice, which I personally believe is going to be the way that coaching is going to happen, not the way we are doing it today. Yeah, the panelists, please.
Ram?
Yeah.
Shaila here?
Yeah.
When I start with having self-awareness and then interpersonal awareness, I'm able to raise the bar in my organizational awareness. And that to me brings a lot of value add and shift in my systemic way of behaving, acting, all of that. It increases my level of communication. It increases my level of empathy. It increases my level of honest expression. And therefore, it brings about a lot of change in the quality of relationships I build in the system.
So, Shaila, if I were to ask you that you're working in a group,
Yeah.
what is it that you would actually do? What is the, what would you ask the group to do, for example, in order for what you say to happen?
There would be a few things that we can bring about by who we are and who by being certain things as in living it. It would be transparency, authenticity, sensitivity, all of that. At the same time, of course, in a group, we also need to be process oriented towards a task. So it would be a balance of both people and task as well in a group, in a team. That's what I would be working at.
Okay. Let me go to something specific, and some of you others in the panel also may have this experience. One of the biggest problems that I experience based on what people tell me in organizations is that when organizations talk about collaboration and teamwork and all that, they reward people for silo mentality. That means you perform well as an individual, you are a star, and that tends to bring in a silo mentality into an organization, which is just the opposite of collaboration. So in an organization like this, when you're working with a top leadership team, what would your intervention be?
So shall I answer?
Yeah, please.
Or a colleague or someone wanting to answer?
No, yeah, no, they can follow. If you can just briefly say that, then we can talk to other people as well.
Yeah. At a top level, what I would really look at is people management and how am I actually working with people? How am I using my power with them, not over them? Because that in itself would enable them to have trust in me, and that would enable them to, work together as a team rather than have a hierarchy in a team, even if it's unconscious.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anybody others? Parma, Kakoli, Devi.
So, Ram, this is Devi.
Yeah.
See, I have been in situations where being in HR and designing compensation, designing rewards, to ensure that we always talk about top performers, and then you have always bonus components. We have always spikes in the bonus for people who achieve extraordinary results. So I agree with you. There is always a contradiction while creating this. Um, what I have seen at some places and that works is about getting the group to understand and respect each other and take up one objective that they can achieve, and the group equally gets rewarded for achievement of that objective. And more and more, if the top team of the organization, the leadership team, can take the organizational objective as equal for all of them, and of course there are ways of doing it, then that yields a result. So basically, it's collaboration, it's respect for each other, and admiration for others' capabilities that actually plays a role.
Okay.
So I am aware about what I am good at, but I am even aware about what the other person is good at. And I've been allowing other person to play the lead, and I'm supporting the person. When that feeling comes within the group, then they achieve extraordinary results.
Okay. Yeah. I see
So
that. Yeah. Yeah. Just 1 second. Is that Parma? Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. I see Mohan had put in here. The challenge would be how to facilitate the flow of feedback to allow the system to self-correct. Yeah, I quite agree with you. That's a challenge as well. But anyhow, yeah. Who was it who was about to say something? I'm sorry, I stopped you.
this is me, Padma.
Yeah.
Ram. So to me, I think one of the very effective or rather powerful thing that has worked out is being vulnerable, helping the group to being vulnerable, and that kind of instills a deep level of trust and helps them to work in much effective way than at a very superficial level. So that's something which is not, it doesn't happen all of a sudden, but it kind of takes a little bit time. But once we get there, I think it kind of I have seen that to be very effective and impactful.
But Parma, tell me, a person who is very alpha, and those are the kind of people who really build silo mentalities in companies, and they don't feel the need for the teams or collaborate and so on and so forth. Vulnerability would probably, I'm just stating a fact, would be one of the last things that I would expect in such a person. So how would you sort of help that person to become vulnerable?
It's a very good point, and I think my experience has been when the threat settles, or rather in other way, that if there is any fear, the fear kind of prevents people, or rather basically force them to operate in silos. So if there is a way we can help them to settle with that fear and insecurity, I think then we can help them to come out with a little more being vulnerable and a little more real than challenging the group or pushing the group away. So if there is nothing they have to lose, or there's no fear that they will be losing anything, I think we can get them there.
You're probably right, yeah. We are not looking for solutions here, but you're probably right.
Yeah.
Because typically bullies, people who are alpha, they also have serious issues of insecurity, and there's a fear. And if that can be replaced by something else which can motivate them rather than moving into that space of fear and therefore acting that way, that could. But these are some of the challenges, and these are some of the risks that you as a facilitator may have to take. How best can we take that as facilitators is very important. So Kakoli, yours.
What I have realized is, most of the time that I have realized that making observations where the group is, and rather than getting into the individuals, that helps. For me, that kind of facilitation helps. making statements about group, what is happening to the group, not as an individual. So the safety is not focuses not on individuals. I prefer to work with the group level interventions. That is where I am. My comfort level is there. And whether it is the group level is creation of hierarchy, whether it is creation of, say, exclusion, inclusion, or whatever the processes are, I work with that. That's where I. So my approach is quite different rather than getting into individuals. Focus is not on individuals, focus is on the group and its impact on the whole system.
So Kakuli, if you are actually working, we just have a few minutes, unfortunately. If you are working as a group, what is probably the one question that you may ask a group, which you know as an organization has a problem of silos, and not necessarily not everybody in the group would agree with that? Would there be something that you would risk saying?
Yeah, I would state that I find that there are individuals who are uh, who prefer to work individually, but I'm wondering what is that which blocking us from collaboration? Is it the fear of the reward, not getting rewarded, or my things would be stolen? Whatever the situation would be, I would make it there, whatever the situation is, I would make a statement like that.
Okay.
Whatever.
No, great. So essentially, you would really bring out into the open, there's a possibility of a fear and anxiety in terms of not working in teams, and what is it about? Great. Absolutely great. Thanks a lot.
What is, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would like you, all of you, to think, both in the panel as well as outside, the participants, see, I would like you to design the process, design what we are going to do next time, in a month's time. There's no point in me pontificating here, because to be honest, I know damn all about systemic coaching, okay? I'm also learning along with all of you. It is that I don't have any starting advantage or anything of that sort. This is an area which I think is going to be the most important as far as coaching is concerned. And I find that OD and the kind of lab work that I did just now, and those in the panel did as well, is making a significant difference in terms of how we can understand group dynamics. So if that is something that you would like to go into some detail or bring some cases which you would like to analyze, please feel free to contribute, because ultimately the success of what we learn from here would happen only if each one of us bring something to the table. So we are pretty much at the end. Magda will now put down, I think the password for the day is celery. For whatever reason, Magda has chosen it because she likes celery. I don't. But celery is a password, CELERY, and you have already the ThinkFlick link. Magda, if you are able to put that stuff,
I did.
and if you could close it, please. Thank you.
Yes, I did put the password in there. And I do like celery. And if you grow your own celery, it is delicious and not watered down like what you get in the store. So I highly suggest that you grow some, but something is eating everything in my garden except for my celery. That's why that's the password today.
How would I dare I say anything different when you like celery, my wife likes celery, so.
I just like vegetables in general.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you guys go to the link I put in the chat, that takes you directly to this particular webinar. But you can always go to coacharya.thinkific.com and you can see all webinars that are eligible for CCEUs at the time that you go. But that is it for today. Next week, please come back to the same time, different link. We will be doing another webinar, actually a panel on presence. And it'll be ran by one of our partners who does coaching with horses. Not coaching of horses, coaching of people, but with horses involved. So it should be really interesting. You can register on coacharya.com/events. And we will see you guys here
Yeah.
next week.
And do come there, because this, again, not only Wharton, Harvard, and everybody else has said, it's an amazing kind of experience that you have with animals. So Kelly is going to talk about equine coaching. Okay, all the best. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Magda. Bye.
Bye.